because the pain is so great. And I would actually call it worse than childbirth. Okay. And I've done twins. So it's worse than childbirth.
Natalie, how did you find carnivore?
I guess the one word answer to that is pain. So I recently was diagnosed with diverticulitis and had 3 attacks in about 6 months. I'm 57 years old. And if we go back more closely to the beginning, I sort of grew up in a traditional New Zealand family with the meat, potatoes, and 2 veg kind of diet. I do recall a few episodes in my childhood where I had difficulty with bowel movements and would get constipated, but didn't really think anything of it because it was just the way life was. And it didn't happen that frequently. And I guess my mum was very focused on diets, even though we were normal sized, not overweight, no obesity in the family. We've been quite lucky with our genes in that way. And even my mum, who's 74, is still relatively slim. But she was fairly obsessed with dieting. And I even remember back when I was 13, 14, I used to make up a huge big salad and have like a really good brown bread with a cheese in it. And that would be my lunch every day at school. So I know for a fact that I was very focused on that kind of thing without it being out of control, if that makes sense. But I'm also one that doesn't like doctors, really dismissed after I left home. I mean, yes, my mother dragged me to doctors as a child for every little thing. But as an adult, I kind of was well, healthy, no problems. Just dismissed doctors for a good, big, long period of my life until I got dragged back in with children, so to speak. But even when I had my twins and they required a vaccination, for instance. It was such a disastrous first experience of that I never did it again. So I've kind of been on the fringe of society, always looking at healthy alternatives and different ways of doing things, and looking for, I grew my family up, I guess, on homeopathics and onions, sliced onion on the feet if they had a cold, and cabbage leaves around the neck, sleeping like that. So I was always on the outskirts of what I would call mainstream. And as a part of that, it got even stronger than that because my husband was a spiritual teacher and we were together for 18 years, and we had a beautiful retreat up north in New Zealand where people would come from overseas and do retreats with his spiritual work, and I would provide all the raw vegan food. So here I was, with a little family, and I'm a raw food educator going to some of the spiritual festivals and partaking in, week-long juice fasts and all sorts of things like this, and feeling really good for it. Now, the thing that I have to admit is, yeah, when I went raw, I felt amazing. But I also look now at possibly that was things that happened that I remember distinctly. Perhaps they were actually showing me something different. Like some mornings, I would get up and I would go about my morning routine, but then around lunchtime I would have 2 liters of vegetable juice and I would buzz for the rest of the day. But now I look back and think, well, what exactly was that buzz? Was it a positive thing or was it not a positive thing in my body? But like I say, I've done a lot of colonics. I've done a lot of even self colonicking at home, and I learned in my early 20s that my bowel was, what I eat was distinctly related to the health of my bowel, because I did actually get quite a lot of acne as a young person. And there was something that tripped it. When I turned 18 on my birthday, I ate a whole block of dark peppermint chocolate. And from that point onwards, for about 20 years, I had skin issues. So it was really interesting, these little points throughout the journey that kind of really tell you more the more you look back at them. And when I had my first colonic, I think I was probably only about 27, only, she says. I couldn't even move. They couldn't even send me home. It wasted me completely. The center I was at just laid me down in a corner for a couple of hours, gave me tea. I think my body went into shock. But my skin cleared up in 3 days. So one colonic kind of healed, 10 years or 5 or 8 years of skin issues, which slowly came back because, of course, the diet wasn't perfect and a lot of carbs were in there. Let's face it. I did a lot of things with my friends, even the eat right, eat for your blood type. We all jumped on that bandwagon for a long time. We even did the HCG homeopathic weight loss program where you eat a tiny, tiny, tiny 100 grams of protein with a big salad and nothing else, and you lose weight quickly. And yeah, you can lose weight quickly that way, but losing weight was never really my goal. It was more about being healthy. And for instance, when I was pregnant with the twins, I was vegan the whole way through. And I was even so tiny that I was like writing down every meal on a piece of paper so that I made sure I got everything I needed. But in the last month of pregnancy, before my children came out, I went mad on red meat. My body just said red meat, red meat, red meat, and I just overdid it. But I was kind of scared that I was doing it, but it was came from the body, not from the mind. And I do remember as a kid, I loved butter. I loved butter on everything. My dad would make bacon, and he didn't like the rind, he liked the fat. So it was wonderful. He would chop off the rind for me, and I'd sit there munching away on pig skin, thinking it was wonderful. And I guess with all the raw education I did, one of the things I often said to people was, if you put a monkey in a cage, you will feed him his natural diet. So what would you do if you put man in a cage? You'd feed him his natural diet. But at that point, I thought the natural diet was fruit and vegetables. So I was even deluded in my delusion, if you know what I mean. It just seemed to be, when I look back now, there's just a mishmash of stuff that led me somewhere. So, I mean, if anyone out there ate a balanced diet, it was me. It was way better than a balanced diet. I was doing a lot of healthy stuff. I even, at one point with my marriage and 4 children, I had one child that was a fussy eater and would only eat rice, carbs, bread, cereal. That's about it. Chips, of course, pasta, plain, all plain. Just that's all he ate. That was the zen, right? Then I had twins that decided they wanted to go vegan. I was eating raw with my husband, and I had one kid that liked the cooked chicken and all the meat. So my entire kind of life of raising these 4 kids was like a commercial kitchen. I mean, I'd end up with 4 what do you call them, dishcloths every night and on the floor ready to go to the laundry, because everything was just, there was so much going on. I had to create food for all these, different diets. And because I'm a Capricorn fire horse, and one of my more slow moving friends tells me I could get dinner ready in 15 minutes while she's still thinking about what she would cook. So I had the ability to do it, and I just did it. So all of that really led me to a place where, okay, over the last few years, I guess, as I'm aging, a few things start to happen in your body. And it wasn't until late last year, because I've been following a lot of these people for a long time. I've heard of Carnivore, but I really sort of dismissed it when I first heard about it. And yes, I understand Jordan Peterson, Michaela Peterson, the tragedy of her life and what happened to her body and the way she fixed it is just miraculous in a lot of ways. But I still didn't look at it as something that was the proper human diet, because my mind was still on that fruit and vegetables. I've cultivated gardens, for the last several years. I just in a rental property at the moment, but I took over the entire yard out there to grow vegetables. And then I ended up in hospital in December crying my eyes out about my garden, for God's sake, because I'm like, well, what the hell? What am I going to do with all that? Because they're telling me low fiber. So it was, I guess, because I'm anemic, or allergic rather, to the medical system, what I call the sick care system. I look back now and think, okay, over the last year or so, I've had several episodes of pain in my gut, the crippling kind of pain where you're literally buckled over and going, because you have to release sound because the pain is so great. And I would actually call it worse than childbirth. Okay. And I've done twins. So it's worse than childbirth. And I had several episodes of that over maybe the course of a year, but it was always short lived. It just came and it went. You know, I had a couple of discomfortable poos and a pain one morning, and then I'm fine again. So I really didn't dismiss it. I really didn't look at it as anything that was terribly serious, knowing that I'm reasonably healthy in most other ways. Yes, sure. I mean, I do a lot of hands-on body work, massage. So I would, start to get pains in the elbows if I did 3 in a day. My wrists would get a little sore. But I had some, potions and things for that. And by the time I've finished rubbing my stuff in, it all feels better. So it was nothing that serious in my mind. But when I ended up in December with like 5 days of pain, literally, I couldn't even really cook for the kids. I was just down here. They'd open the door. We have an upstairs, downstairs situation, and I've still got a 17 and a 19-year-old boy upstairs. And, they'd come down and open the door, and I'd just be, oh, I'm still sick. I'm still sick. So it was 5 days of intense pain, followed by a couple of okay days, and then more pain. So I remember one morning I just laid in my bed thinking, this is ridiculous. I really can't function like this. And I called the health line, and they convinced me to go to the emergency. So I got my boys to drop me off, and I ended up in hospital for 3 days on intravenous antibiotics, intravenous morphine, literally 3 days of sitting in the shower crying because I was still in so much pain. It literally took 3 days of morphine to bring my body into a state of more normal peace, and just that pain gone. And I remember having, and this was unusual too, because every surgeon I saw that first visit was a woman, and I was just so shocked. One point, I had 7 women surgeons standing at the end of my bed while I'm still writhing in pain, telling me if it doesn't get better in 24 hours, they're going to start cutting. And so they literally wanted to take out my sigmoid colon. Thankfully, I got better. Thankfully, it started to improve, and I managed to get home. But after a bout of that, I spent 2 weeks on the couch, literally unable to function. When they send you home after an episode like that, you have to eat soft mashed foods. You really have to be very sensitive to the digestive tract. And so after 2 weeks on mashed potatoes and mashed sweet potatoes and a little bit of carrot and this and that, I just didn't feel like I was really coming right. And I was still on the antibiotics. All their poisons affect me. So even when I'm in hospital, they're giving me the drugs and I'm vomiting everything up. That's why it's all intravenous. They have to give me the anti-nausea before they give me the pain relief. Otherwise, the pain relief it's just a big mess. My body doesn't like pharmaceuticals. So I remember one day I was in that journey of that 2 weeks as I came out of hospital. And this is the other thing that was funny. I was in hospital and my kids had to fly out the next day, all 4 of them, to visit their dad in Bali for 2 weeks, which was a blessing in a way, because when I came out of hospital, I didn't have to worry about anyone. I didn't have to cook for anyone. I didn't have to run them round. And I just had to deal with the cat and the dog. So it was actually quite good. But I think it was a little freaky for my children, sort of flying away from mum while she's in hospital. But one day in that process, I walked past the shop, I went out to get some food, and I'm like, oh my God, I need fish. And I came home and cooked up like a whole kilo of fish, and I stuffed my face with it. And it was almost like my brain turned on. And I was like, wow, okay, I've been eating these veggies, and all this mashed rubbish to kind of help my bowel. But I wasn't in a state of functioning while I was doing that. It was when I ate that fish, it was like, ping, oh, okay, I'm back. Anyway, fast forward 3 episodes of that later. And by now I've joined the diverticulitis support group on Facebook, where all they want to do is cut out their bowel and drink Metamucil. Now, from my natural ways, I had a wonderful potion that had activated charcoal and bentonite clay and psyllium husks, and a really good version of like that Metamucil drink that you would get from the pharmacy. And it even had some wonderful, we have a brand here called Harker's, which is very, very natural. There was intestinal correctional powder in there. And this is stuff I've used in the past. So I was doing what I thought I was doing was all the right things for my body. I also follow a couple of people, Mindy Peltz, I think, who talks about older women and intermittent fasting. And I kind of was intermittent fasting because I have a coffee in the morning, but I don't usually eat till after midday, even before this. And I always had a really strong pattern of getting up in the morning, bowel moving, and then coffee. So my bowel was never stimulated by coffee in the morning. Maybe the second one was, but the first one wasn't. And so I was doing some of these great things, but because I have a job where I can make $200 an hour. I don't have to work every hour of the day. So I have a lot of time, and I'm a researcher by nature. I love, looking at things and searching them out. And one of the things I heard online in one of the podcasts somewhere, and I actually, I know you know a lot of the names of the doctors and people that a lot of us follow. I don't even know their names because I'm not a brander. I just get on and listen. And I even yesterday when I was telling someone that I was going to be on your podcast, I had to look it up. Shit, what's the name of it? Because I just listen to the information where it's how it's packaged doesn't really bother me. But I started to hear some things, and one of the things that really struck me was this sentence landed so heavy for me. If fiber is indigestible, perhaps we're not meant to digest it. And as someone who's grown a vegetable garden for several years and juiced, like fast tomatoes, cucumbers, all the wonderful things that I love that come out of the garden, all of a sudden my mind kind of went, hang on a minute, I'm not sure about that information, but it was landing really heavy for me. And a few more steps on, I learned that all the fruits and vegetables that we eat have only been here 10,000 years, and they've been made up by man, and they all come from one little green weed which was toxic. So I started to think, okay, this is ridiculous. What am I going to do now? And I knew, like, I had a close friend that I was talking about all this stuff too. And I said, I know I need to do the intermittent fasting. I know I need to do, what was the other thing? Well, cutting out the stuff. I know I need to, there were several things that I knew I needed to do, but I didn't know how I was going to sort of achieve it. And I didn't feel like I was in the right emotional place at the time to even do a full on fast. So it had to kind of work around this stuff. And in the process of kind of diagnosing from the hospital system, they tried to do a colonoscopy on me, but I was inflamed at the time, and that was a disaster. And that led into my second attack. And then after my third attack, they did a colonography and then another colonoscopy. Well, after the second colonoscopy, actually, it was a week before, it was July 3rd, I made the decision and I said, that's it, I'm going carny. And I didn't even really know what it looked like. I just went out. I think I was resistant to it because of the perceived cost, which is all rubbish now that I've figured it out. And when I started it, I'm often on a kind of budget where every couple of days I run to the supermarket to get food for the family and to cook for the family and stuff. So I'm always out there, and I'm actually in what I call special mode. Like, I'll go to the supermarket and whatever's on special is what my kids eat tonight. So anything that's marked down is what we take home. And I've even done a video on that on my YouTube channel where I had $250 worth of food that I paid $110 for. And I'm really proud of that because the prices have been going sky high down here, and it's impossible to eat well on a limited budget. But I started, and the thing is, the thing I noticed initially was how easy it was. I had heard about the diarrhea that people get when they change over to carny. I'd heard about all the cravings, and so I was expecting a whole pile of shit to hit me, and it didn't. Immediately what I noticed was my poops changed. I did one small, well-formed poop a day. and I didn't need to eat as much as I thought I even needed to eat. So I would cook up a big steak and have a big slather of butter on my plate and one slice of butter to each bite of steak. And I would cook so much thinking I would eat that, but I didn't even need to eat as much as I thought I did. But what I noticed initially was this like freedom from food, from the overhanging, what do we eat tonight? Who's having what? Because I've still got a carny, not a carny, but he eats more meat than veggies, and a vegetarian kid upstairs. And in the recent past, I would often say to people, I cook for my children and then I eat the scraps, which is kind of true because I can choose, right? I can have some rice from his dish and I can have his chew on his bones that he didn't completely clean. And I literally would cook for my children, not be hungry at the time. I actually prefer to cook when I'm not hungry, so that later I see what plates come back to the kitchen and I'm like eating up all the scraps. So it's actually quite true. I did do that for quite some time. Anyway, starting on the carny, and a week later, I actually had my second colonoscopy, which went really well. But when I came home, I thought this is perfect because there's so much discussion out there over, meat slows down your digestion and all this kind of rubbish, which is just fictional in my mind or told by a doctor to someone and they believe it because they're wearing a white coat. So the white coats don't work on me. So after my colonoscopy, I came home, I cooked up a steak, slathers of butter, and the next morning I had a nice little well-formed poop. And I just continued. I'm blown away by the effects. My face is less puffy. I'm on day about 72, 73. So I'm very new to this, but I can't believe the power of it. About a month in, I all of a sudden thought, hold on a minute. I don't feel that depressive energy on me anymore. Now, I've never had depression. I've never taken drugs for depression. I've never claimed depression. I know shit happens in life and we go up and down, but I was a real grumpy. I really was. I had a depressive energy on me, and I felt that lift off after a month doing carnivore. And it's interesting, every week or so, a couple of weeks, the boys will upstairs will say, "Are you still doing that meat diet, Mum?" I'm like, "Yep, still doing my meat diet. Let me know when you want to try it." But okay, everything's changed. Okay, if we go back a little bit, I've been struggling with my work. One of the reasons I don't want my bowel hanging off the front in a plastic bag is because I work nude. I'm a Tantra central therapist and I work with people in a nude environment. So when they told me they were going to cut out my bowel and stick a bag on my belly, I'm like, yeah, nah, not happening, mate, because you're finalizing my work, right? You're cutting off my income. And so right from the very start, I was like, there's no cutting for me. It ain't happening. I'll do anything else. And I'll even do 60-day water fasts if I have to, but I didn't. So in the process of all that, I'm sort of looking at, well, I was fighting my work because this thing had come up as a problem. I was resisting my work. I had aches and pains. I used to get some numbness in my neck. Like if I lie a certain way at night, there'd be numb, wake up with numb arms and stuff. Even the bottom of my back of my foot would go numb, weird things like that. And all of these things have just disappeared. It's like I can do my work again. It's like I've had a revival. I did 4 massages in a couple of days, and I'm like, what pain? Where? No pain. And the pooping. I mean, I haven't farted, I haven't burped, I haven't had a pain, I haven't had any discomfort. It's just my mind is literally blown. And even these weird spots, and it's interesting because it's all down that left side of my torso. I used to have all these kind of, I don't know, I went to the mole mat place, just to get them checked out. They're all okay. She said you could pick them off. I did that for a little bit, got bored with it, but they are actually starting to fade now. And I reckon that's where some of those toxins were trying to come out on that part of my body as my bowel was getting overloaded. I've also been doing castor oil, and I think this is something that a lot of people with my kind of issue would really benefit from. You can get like a big wrap thing and put castor oil inside, and that I think can really help heal the bowel as well. When I came out of hospital the first time, I had a poop that didn't want to come out. I know this is awful, but it took 3 days, and I was literally massaging around this distended, you know, trying with the castor oil, trying to get this thing out. I would sit on the toilet for like 2 hours at a time trying to get it out. Once it moved, it was fine, but that was after being in hospital with all the intravenous rubbish they'd been putting in me and the antibiotics and stuff. So I literally just can't believe that I've got my life back because I can function now and I don't react to things. This whole emotional overload that I was in, reacting to everything. My car shat itself 2 weeks ago, and the first thing I wanted to do was say, thank you, thank you, thank you for the new car that's appearing somewhere because I don't know where it's coming from, but it's coming. And I didn't even have an emotional reaction, even though it was actually my fault, which I don't want to talk about and put that behind us. But I literally, I feel calm. I feel balanced. My anxiety is gone. I'm not overreacting to things. The boys, a speeding ticket comes in for the boy, not speeding, special lane ticket comes in for the kid. And I'm like, oh well, we'll deal with it. Nothing seems to faze me anymore. And I can do my work again, which I was pushing away. I had myself in such a state of poverty that it was sometimes I was counting out coins, to put petrol in the car or borrowing $20 off my boy to buy some dinner to cook for him. And I just feel like I can carry on with life now. I'm really phenomenally kind of blown away by how easy it is and how it's lifted this whole idea of what I cook, when I cook, dealing with everyone else. So I've got myself into a really cool pattern of, if I am busy during the day, like if I have a couple of early morning sessions or something, I might need to eat by 2 o'clock. But normally I will eat around 4, and I'll have a big cook up of bacon and eggs with butter. I use my lamb fat from roasting to do my cooking with other things, or a big steak. When I say big, it's not really, right? But if I'm full and satiated at 4 o'clock, then when I have to cook for the kids at 6 o'clock, I'm not interested. And that's what I found immediately. I wasn't wanting to pick, I didn't need that piece of pasta. Oh, look at that. I want to have, oh. And this is interesting. It's just come into my mind. When I was raw and I was still cooking chicken for the boys, well, for one boy, I was so wanting that chicken, the smell and everything, that I would take off some skin, chew it up in my mouth to get the taste of it, and then spit it out. So I did that. I remember doing that several times when I was raw, just because I really want to taste that right now, but I didn't want to swallow it or anything, so I would just spit it out. But this is the opposite. I've gone carnivore, and I'm not tempted by any of those things. I have tested it. There was a couple of times when I sat there on a Sunday night, maybe a month in, and I thought, oh look, I really should be allowed like once a week a hot chocolate and a cookie. Yeah, sure. Let's give that a go. And again, the next morning, pain, pencil poops. I call them pencil poops. They come out really, really thin. Pencil poops, fast poops, pain. And I'm like, bye-bye hot chocolate, bye-bye cookies, bye-bye. And I was making cookies to sell at a market recently. So the fact that I've still got 200 cookies in my freezer is irrelevant. The kids will eat those. I don't need them anymore. It's taken away all that desire, the craving. I can't believe, like if I ate a chicken and pasta meal with Carney Kid, we'd have that at 7 o'clock, but by 9, I'm back in the kitchen. What do I need? What do I need? Cheese sandwich at 10 o'clock before bed. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I eat at 8 o'clock, I have a big steak, and I don't need to eat normally until 4 o'clock the next day.
Mm. So
I'm still
it's
coming to
awesome.
grips
It's
with the
freedom,
way
right?
this is working.
Mm. Yeah. So can I just check? So are you eating? You mentioned eating a steak at 8 o'clock. but you have something in the late afternoon. So you're eating twice a day?
Yes, I'm trying for twice a day, 2 meals a day, with a long stroke each day of the intermittent fasting to rest the bowel. So I still find that my poops sometimes are a little more sloppy. So I'm not sure whether there's something that's going on there with the type of protein or whatever that I'm bringing in. But I've had so many different strange experiences. Like a week or so ago, I did 2 late afternoon sessions and I finished at 6 o'clock. I hadn't eaten all day. By the time I came out of my 6 o'clock massage, I was ravenous, right? So haven't even got the time to cook, drive down the road. I went into the roast place and got $2. Well, I said to him, give me $20 worth of lamb, but I want some pork crackling. So he said, okay, $18 lamb, $2 pork crackling. Awesome. He gave me a bag of the pork skin and fat. I went across the road to get Chinese for my boys. I stuffed my face on the fat. By the time I drove home, 5 minutes down the road, I didn't need the protein. I sat there looking at my lamb and it was like 6:30 at night. And I looked at that lamb till the next day because I didn't need to eat it. And that blew me away. I'm like, okay, I don't think I'm eating enough fat. So I've been down there 3 times a week getting huge bags of pork crackling. So just to make sure, because it's so yummy, it's like if we have an addictive gene, my carnivore has found the thing to be addicted to, and it's that well cooked pork
Yeah.
crackling. Fat's so important. I still probably haven't got my ideal ratios, but I certainly haven't experienced eating too much fat because I haven't got the runs from that, which I understand does happen. And I think I was listening to one of your podcasts yesterday with another lady who said the same thing, that because the bowel maybe is so disrupted that when we go carny, we don't get those runs, we don't get that, what do they call it? The keto flu. Um, yeah, so I think it's coming. I think the body naturally, when the bowel's in a state of dis-ease, the body naturally just takes that meat and uses it for benefit. It's amazing. I always thought, again, with the myth or lies that we've been given about, needing that fiber. Uh, Honestly, my poops are like 10% the size of, and not many people like to talk about poop, but I'm right into it because I've done colonics and all that sort of thing. And I think you should always look at your poops. But then I ignored mine for a long time before I ended up in hospital. So I'm not a very good example of what I should be advocating or do. But one of the things I notice is that, especially this came from the spiritual work we were doing, is like when you make a change, if sometimes it can change everything. And I think that's what happened with me, because even when I went vegan, I had great results through my body, but I wasn't starting from a place of illness. I was starting from a normal place. And even my ex-husband, he was a vegetarian for a long, long time in his quest for spiritual enlightenment. And then he went to a place in the outback where they killed a goat because he came to their village and he had to sort of eat the goat, because it would have been rude not to, because they killed the goat because he'd arrived. And so he went back. And people on that sort of level where they are making big changes like that, you always know it all. It's like the change has an effect. It doesn't even matter what change you make. Sometimes it will have an effect. And so I'm still working on some of the finalities of that kind of philosophy, but I do think that yes, you can change one thing and it can almost change everything in your life. A couple of weeks into this, I got really angry, really, really angry at the system that we've been lied to so badly for all our lives. I used to think that going to the supermarket, you work the edges, you go around the meat and then you go around the veggies and ignore all that shit in the middle. And if it's made in a plant, don't eat it. If it comes from a plant, eat it. So I'm slowly dismantling all of this, and I've got skeptics in my life. I've got that girlfriend who, I have to tell her this is a remedial diet, to heal. It's a short-term thing that I'm doing. Don't worry, because everyone starts to freak out about all the things that they would be normally freaking out about. And I'm a bit of an agitator. I love putting posts up on Facebook. And even this morning, someone came on and said, my doctor told me that's the worst diet you could ever do. So I better start listening to her doctor. I think I should really start, because exactly.
So yeah, but so I guess that kind of stuff doesn't faze you, right?
It doesn't, because I just bat it back at people. I just say, look, when you get your bowel disease from eating the shit you're eating and you've done carnivore for 72 days, then I'll debate you. Until then, I'm not willing to go into debate with anyone who hasn't actually done the program.
How
they don't
are
know.
your kids? What's your kids' reaction been?
What has my kids' reaction been? Well, my daughter's still vegan, and I think she's a little shocked, but she doesn't live with me, so she doesn't see it every day. The boy twin that went vegan with her back when they were 14, they turned 25 next month. He's gone back to eating some meat, but he doesn't seem to deal with big steaks yet. He's sort of chicken and fishing. And the ones upstairs, as long as they get food on their plate, I don't think they care what mummy eats, to be honest. But they must be noticing by now kind of a change in me, because I don't overreact in the ways I used to. That emotional component, it's kind of strange to think that it comes from eating carbs, but yeah, it comes from eating carbs. The inflammation in your body, it's hard to imagine that it comes from eating that standard diet. But what I've been doing is upping the protein when I cook for them, and downing, the pasta or the rice or whatever. It's hard to do for my 19-year-old, because he is so active with his tricking and gym. He's at the gym 2 or 3 hours a day, that he has to have quantity, even though he's a vegetarian. So he eats a lot of eggs, which is great, because we're all eating a lot of eggs now. I even farm worms in my garden, and the eggshells go into the worms. So we've got like a whole composting process here, and a lot of the vegetables now are just going straight to the worms. Like, I'm growing the vegetables for the worms. But yeah, they're just doing their own thing, and I'm actually quite happy for people to have their own journey, to come to their own conclusions. So, I still go to the supermarket. I'm not baking anymore, but I still buy muffins and some cookies for the kid that eats that stuff. I still see the other one buying donuts and ramen noodles. But I think in the process of me learning to be me for the last sort of 50 odd years as a person, is that we have to make our own choices. We have to make our own decisions. And no one can really tell you until it's your turn. And when you're motivated by pain, it's a very strong motivator. Like, another girlfriend of mine who is a little overweight and could really do with this said she tried it for a week but went back to carbs. And I just said, well, the pain has to be your motivator. And that was mine. And I'm not going back, because I'm not giving birth to twins every night for the rest of my life with the pain in my gut. So I think people just have to find their own way. But I love the way there is so much information out there now. So as soon as you get interested in this, you can find the information, but you do have to take that step of trying it. And I was really shocked recently talking to my sister-in-law, because she said my brother had actually done it for 6 weeks. Now, he's a entrepreneur who runs several factories with hundreds of staff, and goes between Auckland and down country with a couple of factories. And I was really surprised, but I think he just found it too hard. He had eye trouble for a few years and had some operations. And I thought, well, people are even getting the benefits of their eyesight improving on carnivore. So it would be really good for him to continue. But again, sometimes the negative motivates us more than the positive, which is a shame. But I'm loving my body. I've dropped a couple of dress sizes. My boobs have shrunk, which isn't that great. And I don't want to lose too much more weight. But I just noticing so many changes, more even, more level, energy. You know, I'm awake earlier in the morning. I don't need to go to bed so early at night. I do still have a coffee every day. Maybe one day I'll knock that on the head. Um, I'm a bit skeptical about the dude out there who's only eating raw meat. I'm not quite sure I'll ever go there, but never say never, because you don't know until you're motivated by something that is bigger than the
Right.
change, if that makes
Y
sense.
yeah. It's great, that you've had so much improvement in such a short period of time. If people wanted to reach out to you, Natalie, do you have any way of getting in contact? Do you have any social media or anything?
Yes, my name is Natalie Ziegler, but my Facebook is Natalie. No, it is. My name on my Facebook is Natalie Barton. My YouTube channel, which is just little and growing, and I do short videos on all kinds of weird stuff that interacts with me. Is Natalie Ziegler 1441, I think. But yeah, happy to chat to people, happy to educate. One of my massage clients who was pre-diabetic went and got one of those monitors because it's gone up, and told me he's gone carny in the last couple of weeks. So I've already affected one person, which I'm very happy about, because often I don't see clients for 2 or 3 months at a time, and sometimes some clients come in with a bigger belly every time I see them.
So I'll
And
link
I
to
really
all
want to
those.
also just appreciate everything you're doing.
Oh,
Love
thank you.
seeing your videos come up on YouTube and love listening to them. And I really, really appreciate the work you're doing to spread this new movement about the proper human diet.
Thank you very much. I'll link to all your socials in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, Natalie. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I was very excited to do this, and I hope it helped someone.